June 18th. It's 5:04 right now, and in attendance today, we have Angie Kopacki, Shardul Parmar, Paul Benjamin, myself, Amy Hyden, and Peter Matusko. So the first thing on the agenda is to approve some of the past minutes that we have. I have minutes for April 10th, April 14th, April 16th, and April 23rd. A couple of those meetings were joint meetings with the select board. I have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve all the April 10th, April 14th, April 16th, and April 23rd minutes.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the next thing I would say we should do is maybe we can come up with some dates of another meeting. And then we'll just jump into the rest of it. But I know we're gonna end up needing to meet, and I think sometimes summer is pretty busy. And do you have dates, Linda or Mike, on what you think are gonna be, we have to back into?
How soon are you thinking of starting? July, August?
Well, what we're gonna be focusing on right now is, I mean, we might add little things here and there, but our focus is the task at hand, which is the override. So,
Do you have a particular day of the week that you like? Was it Mondays that you used to do?
so Mondays right now, I think might be good. I don't know. Are they good for you, Shardul? I didn't talk to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
But Andy mentioned Mondays.
Mondays are my preferred.
It's your preferred day.
I can do that.
Peter has some Mondays he can't do. I think he's mentioned once, but Wednesdays could be good too. But the Wednesdays issue sometimes was select board too.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, Mondays are great for me. Tuesday, Thursday with summers, I got coaching some baseball teams, and Tuesday, Thursday practices. So select board, if we can, I mean, if Wednesdays work, every other Wednesday, you could plan a meeting, but Mondays are fine for me. So if that works for you all, I can certainly make myself available.
Okay. On Wednesdays, good. If it sometimes, Andy?
I have to check the calendar. It varies.
Sometimes. Okay, so maybe we start on some Mondays and then go to Wednesdays depending on Peter?
When are we thinking about as to the start of this, like beginning to the end of July to August, as to when are we actually thinking of this, either Mondays or Wednesdays or
Yeah,
in between your sports and everybody else's schedules?
I would say, if the select board and the finance committee can get on the same page tonight for Linda and I, we can start working on our numbers. We've been working with the department heads to gather information from them. The fire department is kind of the one that's out in the open right now. I would say if we can get something concrete tonight, give us a week or two to kind of work on that and aim for
After you get back.
July, the first Monday in July,
Oh,
7th.
you're barely back.
I'm back. Yeah, I'll be back for a week. I'm coming back on the. I'll be back to work July 1.
Oh, okay.
So if you go for July 7th,
Okay, 7 or 14 is okay. 21, maybe not. So 7, 14, 28 look good for me.
I'm good with 7/14. I'm good with the 9th
Yep.
and the
Or the-
16th.
the 9th.
I am not good with the week of the
9th is okay
21st.
too.
So 7, 9, 14 would be fine because the select board meetings would be 2 and 6.
Okay, 7, 9, or 14.
7, 9, or 14.
7, 9, or 14. What, do you have availability?
Yeah. I don't have a much.
If I, so,
I'll have to look, but I don't see that being a problem with the Mondays, which would be the 7, 14, maybe even the 21 belt. I'll find out exactly.
okay,
As long as we get it.
Yeah.
As long as we get some direction.
so for now, we'll like pencil in maybe.
The 7th,
7th.
because you're
The
coming back on the 1st, you're saying?
Yep.
Consider-
We might, depending on how, if we need to push it off a week, we'll go, if you need more time.
Mhm.
I can always say, okay, maybe then push it off to the 14th with a as
Yeah.
a backup.
Yeah, the bulk of the work is done. There's just big things outstanding and hopefully that will be resolved
Well,
tonight.
then, what, do we have a date of when we're thinking about the meeting, the town meeting or any other meetings?
We're probably looking at, September.
Oh, you're looking into September.
Yeah.
This early September.
Yeah.
Early
Early
September.
September.
Probably the first, they usually have them on what, Thursdays? So probably the first Thursday in September, so the 4th. If we need to do it. We still have, to go through these numbers and kind of get an idea.
Okay. Well, my thinking is, so it's the 7th right now with a backup of the 14th, see how that goes.
Yep.
I would also think probably a good idea to put on the schedule is one in August. Because then we're staying up to date. And two, I think we're gonna have to, meet before that town meeting. So Monday, August 4th. Sounds- So it'd be the first Monday of July, the first Monday of August.
Yep.
Yeah. And then if needed, we can add something. That's fine.
It's 5:00.
Oh,
6
what
o'clock.
time?
I prefer earlier, but,
It all depends on
Why
the
don't
work
we
with
say-
me. I was lucky enough for today, so
Why don't we say 6 then? If you're okay with that, you guys,
6 o'clock.
make it easier for you, Peter?
Okay. Okay, 6 p.m. on August 4th and 6 p.m. Okay, great. All right, so now the topics that we're gonna discuss, one is the ambulance. Number 2 is, we're talking about water and water rates, and we're talking about the override. So I guess, Linda or Mike, if you want to fill in the group on what the plan is for the select board, so we can talk about it ahead. So if there's any questions, we can ask you. So we can ask ahead of time.
So, as far as the numbers go, well, we can probably get into a little bit more of that later. And Linda we have some preliminary stuff to talk about, but ultimately we've been working on 3 different things. We've had some discussions in finance team meetings of what folks would like to see as far as how we're going to move forward with this. There is interest that we've talked about we've even passed finance committee meetings talking about kind of a capital stabilization fund or a maintenance fund, whatever you want to call it, to begin to put money away to purchase capital items with cash as opposed to having to borrow for everything. So that's one thing that we've been looking at. What Linda and I have been working on with all of the department heads is twofold. The first part has been discussing with the department heads based upon the reductions that we had to make in FY26, which starts July 1. How do you think FY26 is going to go based upon what we had to remove from your budget? So we've asked all the department heads to take a good hard look at what their budgets look like and give us an idea if they see a shortfall coming. The second part of that is we have told all department heads to assume a level funded budget for FY27. This is where a potential override discussion comes in. We believe that we can successfully get through FY26, even with the reductions and even with some of the departments that are showing a shortfall. But it likely means that we're going to have to use the free cash that is going to be certified, which we usually like to save a good amount of it for the upcoming year. In order to get through 26 with a balanced budget and not have to worry about getting override money for that, we think that we can successfully get through that.
Even with the fire department? No.
So that's step 3.
Oh.
So I'm kind of backing into it. With all the department heads, it's been twofold. So that's step 1 with the department heads. The other part of it is we've told all the department heads, assume a level funded budget. You will get $0 more for FY27. You'll get the exact same amount of money. And then calculate employee raises that are contractually obligated, any expenses that you believe you need to increase based upon that. And then granted, these are difficult. This is difficult for them to ask them to do a 2-year in advance budget. It's hard enough to do 1 year in advance when you're doing it in December. And then we're calculating a shortfall for 27. Now, that we believe is what's gonna, and just stop me if I'm saying something wrong. That is what we believe we would be bringing to the table for a request for an override for every department other than the fire department. Now, we did do that with the fire department on a preliminary basis, meaning because we don't have an answer as to what the select board wants to see with that department, it's been very difficult to gather the data that we need for the fire department to see what the shortfall will be. So we asked the fire chief to approach it the same way as everyone else, show us what he believes his shortfall to be. Lauren is calculating all of the union budgets and all of the increases that are there, and we're estimating a shortfall. Now, hanging out there in the open, the kind of the elephant in the room, so to speak, is the fire department, the EMS, fire department, EMS, the ambulance, whatever it is that we want to call it. And ultimately, that's one of the reasons why we're going to be meeting with the select board in an hour. We need some direction as to what it is that they want to see. The direction that department takes is going to determine how large that shortfall is going to be. For FY26, Amy, to answer your question, the only thing within the entire FY26 budget that is not paid for is that portion of the ambulance staffing. The expenses that are there, I believe it's $125,000 or so, as well as the staffing. As you probably have heard many times, the fire chief has explained it that he has split the staffing in half. He would like in the future to put it all into the fire department and do away with the split services and all that, but that's for another conversation. So that's the thing that we really need a solution for FY26. For FY27, once we know what the plan is for FY26 for those personnel and for the expenses that are related to those personnel, then we can get a better calculation as to what FY27 deficits will look like. And that total will be your override, the select board's override request, if they agree with it. So it'll be those 3 items: the fire department, the rest of the town department's shortfalls, and then this capital stabilization idea.
So my understanding was we were going to so those are the 3 items we're talking about today. That's
Yes.
not the 3 items we're gonna end up with right now.
No, you're right.
Right, correct? Because right now we need to discuss the fire department, and then once we decide on that, then you're probably looking at the override with 2 things.
Yes.
One for the general budget and one for,
Yes,
because you have to separate them.
correct. We need the number we need to know what the
Okay.
direction of the ambulance is gonna be to get that number, and then we will add that together with the other town departments and have a single override and then the capital,
Okay,
right? That's kind
Yes.
of the recommendation.
So the only department that's in the red or that's on the hook right now is the fire department, from what it sounds like.
You don't make it with the numbers.
So, yeah.
Okay, so fire EMS, so it's very important to him to combine it and because we didn't vote the budget that way, I can't just combine it and do it like that, but I'm now have them sort of side by side of fire EMS part 1, fire EMS part 2. And he does move expenses and salaries between them. So there's a good reason to lump it all together so we see what the impact of the entire budget is. So when we put the fire chief's request in for increases for the rest of 26, remember we voted at annual town meeting to fully fund the fire department at a certain level and then put 90,000 in of the ambulance fees into funding the ambulance continuation through the override decision. So the increase he's looking at in the departments themselves, mostly as staff, is close to 700,000. And then if we were going to go for an override to fund that program, joining the budget, then we would also want to include the benefits, because the benefits by reason of those salaries that have been added the last couple of years are over 200,000. So it's about a $900,000 override to fund the ambulance department as it is, as it is, and I think that there's still a question as to whether expensive offices in there are the BLS or some are ALS levels. These are things that we continue to need more information on. But if we were to fund what was submitted to us as the status quo budget going through 26, he needs an additional almost $900,000 for us to fund this budget. Exclusive of that 900,000, other departments, as Mike mentioned, we're more like we're between 200 250,000 is needed. They're looking at shortfalls, and maybe we cut too much in some of the departments. So 200,000 is usually something that we take up at a fall town meeting and use out of the free cash that's certified as July 1. The trouble is that free cash that we're using is increased each year. So what we had initially talked about, and when we were looking for a town override, is that we're going to take care of that annual deficit that we have. This year, if we look at what we already used in free cash and redirected free cash, we sort of moved some things around to make that possible to fund the 26 budget. We already used almost $850,000 in free cash. So this 200 would bring us over $1 million in free cash for funding the 26 budget. I'm not talking about the fire ambulance increase. I'm just talking about the rest of the town. If we're going to still take that approach, and then we would have that base of 850,000 plus the 200, so it might be close to $1 million. That doesn't mean that's what the current shortfall is, but that's the shortfall that we're building towards in the next year. If we were to even that out and take care of that with an override that got us back to square, then the next year's increases of $800,000 in revenues looks at this point for 27, what would be in place to fund the 27 requests. So that would take care of us for 26 and 27. So we may not want to do that, fund the 850,000 plus at this point, because we're already dealing with the ambulance and the numbers are getting big. That's why we need to know the plan.
And the numbers you just gave us for the ambulance, the estimate, does not include if they get certified during that time period as ALS, which is going to increase our base rates on the employees. So, do we need to build that in? Do we have an estimate of what that would cost?
So there's no estimate, only because it's very situational. In that if you go ALS, you need to start providing paramedic service. So you need paramedics. Paramedics make more money. Paramedics get a higher stipend for being a paramedic, and there's training involved. If you hire somebody who is not a paramedic, you have to send them to the training to get the paramedic. So again, it's kind of situational. He has two active paramedics, maybe 3 out of the personnel that he has. So it would be training for the people that currently work there and or hiring them as paramedics to pay them at a higher rate. And then in furtherance of that, there would be whatever the capital expenditures would be as you move forward with an ALS service, replacing ambulances and things like that. Now, granted, if you stick with a BLS service, that will still need to happen, but there is likely some type of a cost difference.
Okay, but
No, go ahead.
I guess I feel like, is there some, estimate, not necessarily to hold you to, that's gonna be a additional 15% or 20% of the total budget? Or do we have some idea?
Well, I can tell you that the cost of paramedic school is $25,000 for two people to go, $24,000 annually, I guess, it's a one-year school. The stipend that paramedics get for being a paramedic is $6,500 annually, just for being a paramedic. And generally speaking, what's the annual pay difference between a paramedic and an EMT?
And it's quite significant. 40, wasn't it 40,000?
I got a question as to, now this $700,000, that's with funding the fire department and the ambulance, or
That's-
just the fire department?
That's the increase in fire and EMS. It's not, there's been such an effort to get them merged that we really can't tell the difference anymore. I think when we first did the budget, it was given to us as we've got a full timer and 3 half-timers over there, then it was 4 half-timers and the most recent one is he's taken all 8 employees and put them half in each budget. So it's virtually, a certain amount of effort goes into trying to separate these out, and if the interest is in combining it, then I'm taking the combined increase between the two. So we've got, right now, we have a full fire, we have funded the fire budget in full for 26. We've only partly 90,000 for the ambulance. If we combine them, the increase to both budgets combined, because like I said, they're almost indistinguishable, is that almost 700,000? Is it all ambulance? Mostly.
Because I'm looking at going, if everybody else is balanced and the ambulance fire is the one who's in debt of 700,000, where there are not enough of cuts of other departments that everybody's in the black or even, and then you got in the red 700,000. That just seems a drastic amount of money if it was a few $100,000. But if you're talking about $1 million in one department and all the other departments, they're all even, were there not enough of cuts of other departments to help?
No, it didn't work that way.
I'm just trying to figure this out. It's saying that if the ambulance and the fire department is in the red for 700,000, potentially 9,
Yeah.
and everybody else is even.
What happened?
That's because-
Exactly. What happened?
That's
Yeah.
because it was
Using
never
free,
funded.
because we've been using reserves
It
to
was never
fund it.
funded.
It's been in the red for the last 3 years.
Because I know we went above, got that ambulance funded. It was like
It's been
4
funded
or
by article.
500,000.
That's where all the free
That
cash
was
is.
one of the
And the
multiple
reserves,
years.
and all of our
So
reserves.
The problem is that we added personnel, but it was never funded from the actual operational budget. It was either taken from free cash
Right.
or stabilization or a combination thereof.
Peter, we've spent $2 million on this department. This ambulance project has cost this town almost $2 million.
Almost one.
Well,
Oh, we were adding ambulances?
yeah,
Oh, okay,
I'm just saying, this
okay,
this
sorry, I
endeavor,
thought you meant the budget.
this endeavor has cost this town over, between our reserves and free cash and everything else, we're talking about $2 million. That we've so far made about 90 grand.
And it's not, I think.
Was that
what you're
including
saying-
of the new fire hydrant, or that's totally separate for the override because of that new fire?
Latter.
hydrant?
The engine,
The new engine
the
truck.
engine is in.
Okay, just
We're
wanted
not
to
even
make sure.
talking
No,
about it.
that's a future.
No, no,
thing.
it's a future.
Yeah.
We added an ambulance service.
Right.
We have a outside service that costs us $180,000
Mhm.
upfront. When they build to a certain point,
I
they're our
understand
first
that.
one, right? Okay.
Let me
So
rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. We spent $2 million. We've also gotten a full-time fire department.
Right, that's
Because
the,
prior to that,
Mhm.
we were only, you probably know better than me, we're only doing 12 hours, what was it, 7 to 7, 6 to 6 or
And the
something?
fire chief and the deputy chief were covering.
Right,
Daily.
Right.
daily. So now we're 24/7. Now, even if we get rid of the ambulance,
we
we're-
want to have a full-time.
we're, I think that
I think,
we have to decide as a town, do we want a full-time fire department or not? We go back to where we were in 2022, 23,
About 4 years.
4 years, 21, where we were, and this was, back then, this department was what, $500,000, $600,000 or something like that?
I'm not even sure, was that
It was somewhere,
Yeah,
if my memory reminds
In
me,
the seven-ish.
yeah, we're going from that to today, it's $2 million department.
Mhm.
So everybody, the situation we're in financially is almost 100% because of this endeavor. This venture that we looked at doing, and that doesn't even account for, again, future capital costs and liabilities for benefits and everything else that we're looking into. I love the fire department. I like Mike, but I'm a business person, and I told this to many people. Like, we're a town, and we have enough operational things that we do. I like services, but I don't want to add any more services to this town.
So I don't know if these numbers, I saw on the select board that you had in the board docs, you had how many people were in the fire department and the list of their names and how many checks. So it looked like in 2020, we had 5 firefighters. So 2 captains, 3 firefighters, and then obviously Mike and the deputy. So there was 5.
But I don't think they're full. Were they full time?
Were they full-time people?
Yeah, I don't.
The 3 firefighters and the 2 lieutenants? I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I think they were lieutenants and then.
2 lieutenants
Plus the call force.
Okay.
and the call force. But so they had 5.
And that was Monday through Friday, 7 to
7 to 7. So now in 2020,
So after 7
Or was
PM,
that
it's all
include the
called
weekends
for,
as
yeah.
well, or just?
Better to not have a fire at night.
when I looked on 2023, you had 6. You had an extra, you now had, I see 6 people. So
That could be, a leave of absence.
Okay.
Or something like that, where someone was hired in to cover a shift because someone was out. So sometimes we have people who go out, on deployment or
okay,
maybe medical leave of some sort.
all right.
Where
So now I'm
someone-
seeing around 6.
Mhm.
So from 20 to 23, 6, but now we're at 9,
Mhm.
which is not. So you went from 7 to 9, so you only
The
added
ambulance
3
coordinator?
people.
That 9, does that include?
That includes the
Yes.
coordinator.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
That was 4 and 4, and then Dave.
Okay, well, that's good. Oh,
I think so.
okay.
That's what he told me. I asked, so
Okay.
it's 9. And according to these numbers, when I looked, it showed 9.
So Linda, in that extra 700 plus 200 in benefits that you were talking about earlier, for 26 and 27, does that also account for potential raises and benefits? I mean, increase in cost and benefits and the like, or?
So the 27, yes, it does. We calculated all of that in as best we could based upon, again, no direction as to where we were going with this. But if the people stay, we did calculate in what their
COLA and
increases would
and
be.
benefits increases. Yeah.
Now, going back to what Peter had asked earlier, he asked, is the fire department the only one in the red, so to speak? Yes. But it's important to remember that we only have enough money to keep everything that we have right now as it stands until October-ish,
90, yes, probably.
okay? Which is one of the reasons why
September.
we're aiming for a September override, so that we have some idea as to whether or not we can save this. And if that fails, we're gonna have to all come back together again and decide how to move forward after that. I mean, it's either utilize every single ounce of free cash that is certified after July 1 to cover as much of it as we possibly can, which I don't think will be enough. We're thinking $500,000. It's getting less. Or stabilization.
So real quick, in terms of timing, if we have this meeting in September, and I'm assuming this is gonna have to go to a ballot.
Mhm. It's gotta go to a ballot, as far as the law says, we would have the town meeting early September. And you can go to a ballot inside of 45 days. So we would go as soon as possible, we would start getting it together
That would be
as soon as possible after
quite in
September.
time for, or just about in time for town meeting, or not quite in time for a special town meeting?
Yeah,
And you,
that would be where we fix.
and you can only guess if it's gonna go, well, I guess you do the budget one way or another, right?
Yep. Unfortunately, we probably would be doing two.
The other thing I want to add is, we have to look at the whole path of this. So the ambulance the goal is to get ALS and to have our own full-time ambulance. The fact is that we're, not even halfway. And to achieve, to go to where we're fully staffed, we have to add at least a minimum of at least 3 additional to realize the revenue that Action is running. And even my calculations, I did an analysis, I don't think that's even enough. Because you don't have enough people to man a fire truck and man an ambulance at the same time.
And
His-
these paramedics at this point.
Well, whatever,
That's
they
what I'm
wear,
saying.
depending on, when they go down the pole, they grab a different hat, one is,
More
one is-
expensive than.
Than the other.
Right,
Yes.
but we're gonna have to, if we take over Action, we're first response.
no, but,
Right.
but the thing is, you have to go, like, I asked the question, Paul was there. If there's an ambulance call and a fire call at the same time, where they're going, and if there's some schools on fire, some massive fire, they're sending all of their firefighters to that. And then there's nobody's there left to man the ambulance at that moment.
There's the call force anyway that you still have besides the full-time fire.
What I'm saying is that you're gonna have that delay.
Yeah, your
Now,
paramedics have gone through.
now,
But you also have mutual aid, that's gonna happen and you'll end up
well,
with.
my point is that to effectively go and operate it instead of relying on all of these other things. Because right now, we have Action, which is a full-time ambulance, dedicated, thank you, dedicated ambulance. We want to go and replicate that. We don't want to go and say we're this or that. We want to go and replicate that. He has, the budget that he's asked for was 7 people. So for us,
7 additional people
7 additional
that we don't
people
have now.
that we don't have now. This is gonna be end up being the second largest budget. And I think close to second largest budget in the town if we go, that's the path we're heading for. Right now it's 700,000, 900,000, 800,000. We're talking about shortfall, but we're talking about in terms of a global budget, $3+ million department. Plus, that's not even including the capital. Because the ambulance is gonna be somewhere between 200,000 to $500,000, depending on the level of, upfit that we have it to go to. I just wanna make sure everybody understands that this is today, but when we have to start looking at what's 2-3 years down the line, what are we signing ourselves up for? This town has made enough mistakes where we go and do enough things in good light, but then we don't understand that the roof is only 10 years old, or that we have to go and heat the buildings. We have to go and think about these things
We have to maintain them.
and we have to maintain them. We have to think about our obligations ongoing. And I just don't want to add any more obligations to a town where we're having this tough decision today. We're going to have more of this is just adding to that pile. Do I want an ambulance? Do I want good service? Of course, but do I want to go and start doing all of this right now? When we have our nose at the grindstone financially? I
So when
To
you,
your earlier point though, to put us in a bit in this position, and now we're gonna double down?
So Mike, the problem is
Sorry, Mike.
the goal was to have our ambulance and not have Action. That was the original goal of the
But we didn't
ambulance
fully
committee.
understand what we were getting. Financially, nobody really went and said, like, when I go and do anything in business, when Peter's doing anything getting a piece of equipment, he's gonna say, this is gonna derive so much income, and he's gonna go in and analyze that. I'm gonna go and say, this hotel is gonna analyze, I have to show that to the bank, I have to show it to people. We were using, again, I'm not pointing fingers, but we were using just numbers arbitrarily. They weren't real, real third-party verified numbers to say, this is what is.
Well, we're using actions, numbers.
Not in terms of operationally, we weren't using, or do we see what the budget impact was going to be? Did we look at what their reserves are for equipment? Do we understand the full life cycle costs of everything that they're doing? No, we probably just looked at a top line number without understanding, we're getting into the billing business now. Like, do we know that we're getting into the billing?
We just
business?
saw the $180,000 and everything's great.
So,
Oh, million
Wait a
bucks.
minute.
Right,
A million
what it
bucks.
costs for, but then after, like you said, the operating costs, because we're not seeing anything, we're just paying $180,000. Staffing of all those people, retirement, just everything when it comes to them, and like you said, equipment, updated training, all those things, that was, I think, went over like this and said it all sounded good until the numbers look good, so doesn't matter how much, we're probably still in the red, no matter how much revenue we're creating by this one bus.
And revenue collection rates,
And Peter,
Yeah, no, I got you.
you're in business, I'm in business, right? We're successful because we understand what we're doing. There's a lot of people who get into hotels, a lot of people get into HVAC, and they're dead in the water within a few
First
months.
5 years.
First 5 years.
Yep.
You know it. So,
Yeah.
and it's, the thing is like, is that our competence? Like, we have to go and decide, is that what we want to do? We want to get into this business?
Right,
Because
and then you got third-party billing.
it's,
Right.
it's one of those things, do we want to, do we really want this? And right now, we've spent this much money for a second, not for a first call ambulance, but a second call ambulance.
so my question to you is, what for just off the ambulance for the fire department, are you thinking you want a full-time fire department 24/7 or go back to a part-time and only on call?
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna sound selfish because I have a lot of buildings in town. Obviously, I'm gonna say a full-time fire department.
Okay.
But I think as my finance committee, as a person appointed to go and represent the town, I think the town needs to decide. I think it's everybody needs to go and say, what do we want to spend our money on?
So that's the issue, right? We can't put 10 different choices in front of 1,000 people at a town meeting and say, pick from the menu of what you'd like to support. Do you want a full-time fire department? How about ALS? Maybe BLS here. This needs to be decided at, I believe, and I think Linda agrees. We feel like this needs to be decided at this level, meaning we have to be on the same page. Do we want to keep the personnel and keep a full-time fire department? If the answer is yes, then that number, whatever that number is what goes forward. Do you want to continue going for an ALS license? If the answer is yes, then that's the number we project moving forward. Do you want to pause ALS and keep the fire department and simply keep BLS, which is what we're doing now, right now? And if that's the case, we have a number, we'll have Mike get us a number for that. And then that's what we put in front of
Do
it.
we have those three numbers, or this is something we have to?
We have two of the three.
Well, like you said.
There's been no discussion, there's been no real discussion about what a BLS service would cost, because Mike has been moving towards, basically what he's been directed to do, an ALS service. That's what the ambulance committee has been directing him. That's how he's been directed the entire time. So we would have to sit down with him again and have him calculate what that looks like. So that's the only number that we can't get ourselves.
And
We think that will come down a bit from, if we stay with BLS.
it's gonna be
at
the
this
same.
point. Well, it could be,
We're
I
running-
think
we're
there
doing
are
it right now.
There are some,
Status quo now, we know exactly what our numbers are.
No, you don't, because
Why?
the first one said, are we gonna continue with a full-time fire department? That is part of your ambulance.
What I'm
That,
saying is, we already know the numbers.
No.
We already have, We already
Yeah.
Well, you know the numbers right now, but here's the thing, if you're not gonna, if the select board says, don't submit the application for ALS, you're not going ALS right now.
we just stay status quo.
We stay status quo, we know what that number is, however, the future number's lower. Because you don't need paramedics, you don't need to send people to training, you need EMTs as opposed to paramedics. And granted,
But that's
I may
that's
be
nominal.
completely wrong, but that's just the little that I know about.
That's a nominal amount, meaning we're talking about
The
tens
ALS?
of,
Right,
the training and all that. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars.
tens of thousands.
We're not talking about anything
But-
substantial.
But again, if you don't wanna be in the ambulance business, then you
Oh,
have to,
that-
they have
that,
to,
yes.
yes.
No, I'm saying we're ongoing maintaining the BLS level. We were talking about really the
BLS as opposed to just fire. Yes, I think that's nominal.
right.
That's why, yes.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? We haven't even been fully operational, I think, BLS for a full year.
and I
So,
want
I mean, why wouldn't we stabilize
Right.
the other thing.
first?
The other thing is that I don't think we've never had two ambulances in town,
Mhm.
right?
Well, what do you mean?
Meaning prior
Previous
to
to this project?
Well,
No.
Acton has,
Action, I mean,
no previous to this we had Amherst,
yep,
right?
Mhm.
And Amherst really
that was it.
that was it. That was
If
really
they were
one
tied up, they would send,
They
they
would-
would call mutual.
and you know, and then they jacked up their price to $500,000 or whatever, something crazy.
Yep.
And we said we're going to go and do this. And
Yep.
we have Action,
Yep.
which is significantly cheaper, but there historically we've never operated with two ambulances.
Right.
I just want
We
to make
didn't have a
sure
backup.
this is to me this is
They
a little
did.
bit of a
They had the backup. The backup was where the exotic auto is now. So Action had one stored here in our center, and then their backup,
well, but
was-
physical. Not I don't think they were running two crews.
they did come for second calls.
Action had a
But-
second call ambulance
They
over there
did.
by the bridge, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
I-
but they moved it and then it went to Holyoke or something like that.
Something,
Well,
when
what I'm
when
saying
they
is-
bought it, yeah.
What
Well,
I'm
it
saying
wasn't- it was physically in town for a short period of time and then it did have to move.
But what I'm saying is that they only ran, we're right, they've only really run, even with Amherst, it was running one ambulance, really, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanna make sure we're doing the things that a lot of people, financially get themselves financially in trouble for. We're increasing, we're changing the scope of what the intended replacement was and what we're now trying to do. Because we've been operating with one ambulance, and now I'm not saying, yes, there's gonna be some level of, I guess, disruption or, collateral damage. I don't know, not using the right word for not having a second ambulance, but it's not even an ALS ambulance. It's a basic ambulance that a fire truck, the person on a fire truck can come and do the same exact things that the ambulance can do. Because
So it's important that we have these conversations when we get
No,
into the other
I
room,
just want-
because
Yeah.
it sounds to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like we really truly are advocating for a potential of 3 different tracks. One of them is fire department only, no ambulance, period, no BLS at all. And we have 2 ambulances that we bought and stocked and put all the equipment in that we would need to do something with. And if that's what is decided, then that's what's decided. But again, that we can get a number for that. Then there's right now status quo, the true status quo with what we're doing. Like Linda said, we've made 90 grand-ish, 100 grand, somewhere around there, and however long we've been doing it, and it probably hasn't even been a year. And then there's continue. Keep going, Mike. Keep going and get an ALS license, and we'll move in that direction and we'll see how it goes. So my concern is that we cannot walk out of this building tonight without one of those 3, and I don't even care. Somebody can come up with a 4th one.
Where
It
was
doesn't
that
make any
money
difference to
come
me.
from?
As long
Is that
as
the
you have a
income from
direction.
the BLS?
So I
Okay.
wanna,
But and Mike, and Peter, I will make sure you understand. That's only collecting about 60 cents on the dollar.
Oh, I know.
so
Yeah. Insurance company.
I just wanna tell you where I'm coming from.
Correct.
And the Medicaid reimbursement rates, et cetera.
So if we have a full-time fire department and we have all the staff, that we have currently today, okay? In my mind, I was looking at my calculations and we're looking at almost a break even. We about 100,000. It's costing us for the extras for the BLS. They're bringing in about that. It's almost, and I'm not advocating for the ALS
That's
at
not
this
including
point.
capital.
Yeah,
That doesn't
but-
include,
but-
How much are they bringing in your,
If they're bringing in about 90 to 100,
no, that's since.
That's 15 months.
That's since
I thought you said it's
inception.
not a year.
Yeah, no, you just said that, but yes,
Yeah.
15, we're making
year.
about 60,000 a year.
Okay, so we have to look at these calculations to see exactly how much it's costing us besides the people. What is the price it's really gonna cost us without the people, the
So your-
extras? What are
Your
the extras?
expense calculations are in the area of 130?
I calculated it myself,
Right now,
based on what he had given me, and when you add in the capital, you're talking about $300,000, because to put aside money for equipment.
I'm not putting in, I'm just talking
No,
about,
you have to. No, we can't go and make this mistake again. We have to look at the total cost, the true cost of this to the town. And forget about all of these operational and this and that. We have to say, it's gonna cost us additional minimum $200,000 a year, because then in year 5, the motor blows and we have to buy an ambulance and we're writing a check for two to 200,000 or $500,000 that we're gonna go and borrow at 5-6%.
so I wanna see what the exact true cost that it's gonna cost us for the BLS. For something like that, and because it is a service that when they're using just the fire department when they're not doing a fire, it's what we have, it's
So
the
you
it's the
want-
backup.
so you want an annual current.
Well, I'm just saying, if
But we know this number. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because-
if we're status quo with the
Eight,
full-time
900.
fire department and the BLS, we should know those numbers.
We do.
Right.
They're right now.
Yeah, well-
100, currently as for FY 26, the expense costs needed, what was it, 190 initially? For the ALS plan.
And that's with our own.
That's the expenses, no personnel.
So 125.
And that's not capital.
That doesn't.
That does not include
Right.
capital, so it doesn't
Right,
include.
so again,
you know,
when
any
it-
equipment that he hasn't planned for,
Right.
ambulances that he hasn't
So-
planned for, things.
That's
down
with
the
our
road.
own staff, full-time fire department
To be second call.
that are EMTs, because paramedics would be the ALS, but
Right.
they are EMTs.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be our second call.
They would be our second call.
So again, we have a first call ambulance, it costs us $180,000 up front.
Yep.
If they hit a certain billing point, they start rebating money back to us. Some years we've gotten 160 back. What are we on track for, we think, right now?
You'll get a full rebate.
We're gonna get a full rebate.
And,
So our
Yep.
first call ambulance is gonna be a freebie.
and that's today.
That's today.
That's today. That doesn't increase. We're talking about labor wage increases.
Right.
And we know right now.
And Action's eventually gonna say, we want more money per.
They just went
contract.
down.
They just went
It
down.
went from 180 last year to
Yeah.
150 this
Oh,
year.
okay.
But the point is that where our people are gonna go and start going, and when you go and allocate that, you're gonna allocate the fact that we're probably gonna get less Medicaid or whatever reimbursements, going forward. It's not gonna go up. Everybody knows the writing on the wall where the federal government's going towards that. It's nothing, it's not rocket science. And the fact that our collection rate is almost 20 points less than what where it should be compared to what the other what action has been
Right,
collecting.
and,
Something
and
like
one other point,
and we have to manage it. That means it's more management, more headaches, more everything. It's just, again,
To having this BLS or making it BLS?
both.
well, either way.
ALS
And by the way,
will be a lot.
Oh, it'd be a lot more.
If they come to your house, you call, right? Your spouse is not feeling great, you call, and they check you over, and they say, come on, we're gonna take you over to Cooley Deck,
Action.
okay? Ours, or Actions.
Right
Okay.
now.
Yeah,
we
but
could
we-
call
So
the
we're
ambulance.
second call.
BLS,
Yeah.
that's
Let's say the action's already out, we get a call, they go to the house, okay?
Mhm.
And they say to the person, okay, they'll check your vitals and all this, and we're gonna take, you know, let's take you over to the hospital, and you go, I don't wanna be bothered. I'm good, thank you.
that's a freebie.
That's a freebie,
There's no charge.
no charge.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. And we've run into that.
Mhm.
Chief has said that we do run into that. People don't wanna go,
Mhm.
okay?
On the BLS side.
On either
No,
side.
Or on
any-
both
any-
accident
yeah,
ambulance?
any
Oh,
side.
okay.
It happens to ambulances
All
all
the
the
time.
time.
Okay.
It happens,
Okay.
that happens a lot.
I mean, I talked to a neighboring town, they said they have, you know, you have to sort of set up a way to bill that, and it's not easy to go.
Yeah.
Right, good luck, right?
It's an operation.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
You know,
You
the
take care
exact-
of
the
your-
next
it's part of
guy
your
right.
losses.
I mean,
so.
you can wear t-shirts that say,
Operational
please take
losses.
the ride.
Yes.
I need the money.
We
That's
have,
all you can do.
my next meeting starts in.
So you all can keep going. I mean, unless you want to watch the sewer thing. And then when the
Well, sewer thing
override
sounds
discussion starts, we'll have you guys sit up at the table with everybody else and we'll go from there. But if you want to keep your meeting going, argue. I'd love for you to come into the other room with a decision. That would be awesome.
I mean, it would be just nice to know of what are the operational costs with the upcoming pay raises or whatever it is, the benefits with running with the full-time fire department with the BLS. If we know what that number is,
That's,
that's
That's what
help,
we-
that's helpful.
That's
Yeah,
status
that's-
quo.
that's what
That's
we-
status quo.
we've
That's
given,
status
Right.
quo.
yeah,
What is it?
that's the 900,000.
Okay, that's another, that's what I want.
Including the benefits, and that goes.
Any of the additional cost of the BLS, running an ambulance right now, just that without capital, is close to 200,000.
You expenses only. is what you're
Expenses
saying.
only.
That's what I was trying to, Amy and I were,
Yeah, without salaries.
so, yes.
Then-
right.
Yeah.
That-
Just
that's-
to-
Look
Yeah,
at the
have one-
expenses.
So you're moving the salaries, because you're moving the salaries,
costs.
you're moving the salaries over to
Oh,
the fire
from one to
department.
another, okay,
So
now
at that
additional
point-
because that's
Because
right.
remember, what's
Same-
happening now,
Same clientele,
Right.
just increasing salaries because
Right.
of their title from fire to paramedic.
If you,
Right.
if you were to drop, see it. You guys should go.
You
right?
guys
Yeah.
can go.
If you were to drop the,
Let's go.
if you were
They're doing
dropping
good.
Yeah, I'll stay,
BLS,
I'll stay.
Okay.
right?
You don't want to see
If you're
the
dropping
sewer
BLS,
rates?
now you've got the question of, you've got
I'll let you know when
24/7
it's
fire department.
You can.
Do we need to cut that down?
Do we need now this?
Watch it later.
So
also.
that's why we're looking at, do you,
Status quo with
bring it back
900,000,
to-
do we get rid of the fire department?
Do you go
Like
back
half of
to the
fire
5 days, 5 days, 12 hours a day? Do you stick with where we're at, which is 24/7, which is helping to supplement?
Right. Do we know what
So
that
it's
number is though, that if it was a
$200,000,
part-time, do we know what that?
Part of that is included in the fire department side. Or do
No,
you,
it isn't.
No.
No, that's dedicated ambulance. It's about $200,000.
but that's, so, okay.
That's on, so in other words, if you were looking at the ambulance budget and you removed all salaries and just looked at what are the expenses dedicated towards the ambulance?
Yeah.
That's about $200,000.
So if we're to cut,
And we're saving
if we
200,000.
cut the BLS service and stuck with 24/7 fire department.
We'd
you're-
still be short, but more like
But
more like
six,
675, something like that.
6 to 7 instead of.
Right. And then we have two
Instead of-
Down to
ambulances.
about 200.
Instead of,
ambulances
you
we-
were saying a million to
We're good.
900 to 102 to,
And how many full-timers do we have?
right, wait, I want to get this.
That would stay the same. Well, right now,
How many full-timers?
Nine plus the
So we
deputy
got
and the
9
chief,
full-time.
and the chief,
So this, in
11.
that scenario that I was talking about, what is the reduction? You said it's about 6 that were short. Is that a $300,000 amount?
So what, the budget we were planning on was continuing the BLS. If it was to back off to just fire, the savings, and the expenses are lined up correctly between the fire and the ambulance, it would be coming down, at least $125,000. And following what Lauren was explaining earlier, any replaced person, if we weren't going to even have the BLS, I mean, we don't need the paramedic. And then the EMTs are much less, and actually for fighting a fire, I'm not sure you need the EMT, but EMTs are good. So there would be that savings because we have the two paramedics at this point, which are really quite a bit more. It's not just the 6,500, they said there's base salaries too.
Okay, but
So there might be, yeah, a couple 100,000 would
Savings.
be my guess.
That's,
A good guess, I think, down from, so
Now-
there'll still be a need for the override.
Is there potentially gonna be the thought saying if we don't need the BLS, that we cut it and cut half the staff and making it a part-time call force? Because if we don't have the ambulance as BLS, what do we need all these full-time fire department for? That you make it as a call force or on call?
24/7 fire, that's.
well,
what
that's
you
where
get.
the override is. That's why I
Yeah.
think it should be as part of the override, just to spell it out very clearly that the override is to go for a 24/7 fire. If we were to get rid of the ambulance and say that we need this override to fund the full-time, it should be to maintain the full-time fire department, then that's the override, basically.
So if they're looking for a recommendation out of the three, now maybe four choices.
Three.
Three
well,
choices.
well, I think we should whittle it down. You know, there's you got a couple choices. Do it like the house buying shows. Let's eliminate one that we just either can't afford or won't.
I can eliminate the ALS because I think we're all agreed on the ALS.
Right.
Okay,
So
So
the difference between the
Well-
other two is a couple $100,000 and the fact that we already have the ambulance and we have a certain investment in that direction.
And-
We can legitimately say that we have a pause
right,
as opposed to,
right.
I like
Elimination.
personally, I like the BLS, I like the pause. And not the ALS, I like the hybrid, I do see you're saying the 200, we have the equipment invested in it. We are getting some income which will offset that if there is a disruption like they have talked down the road, could be. I'm not doing it, but if there was a disruption, we would be in a better area to handle a disruption than if we had absolutely nothing.
that's right.
Okay,
That's right.
and we
Be
get a
ready for
full-time fire department.
And we get a full-time fire department, and we were paying before we got action, we were paying between at least over 300,000 to an offset for the ambulance. So now we have a free ambulance
With no rebate,
with no rebates,
so.
we were paying.
But now we do, but now we have an option that's significantly cheaper.
Right.
And
So she's comparing the 350 before to this, basically the zero now.
We have
basically
zero
it's
now.
zero and we haven't even asked Action what it would cost to do two fire, to do.
That
to do
has
it.
been asked and answered, and I just don't know it. I think David.
It,
Phillips-
it
So how
costs
much is this
$1 million
override we're
for a
thinking
bus.
about working
$1
in?
million to run a bus.
$1 million for them to
For
add.
Action,
To add a second
action
one on.
figures on how much does it cost them to run an ambulance? And it costs them, they told us the amount is $1 million per bus.
That's what, but is that what they would charge us?
No, that's not what they would charge us.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just
So
saying
what
how
is-
much does it cost them to run an ambulance?
I'm saying is we haven't gotten a proposal from them to say, okay,
To go back to full A and B.
they could run two A's.
Yep.
Right? We could have two A's and it could be 200,000. We don't even know, right? We haven't even broached that question. That's why I don't wanna go, when, it's just like, we could all do, like, there's a lot of things I could do myself in my business, but I hire people who are better at it than me than to do it because it's gonna save me money and I probably won't screw something up.
Well, we're gonna keep action. That's not a question.
What I'm saying is that if we're gonna we're taking this on and we're probably doing a great job of it, but it's more government really at the end of the day that we're agreeing to. We're trying to this town needs to, I think you would agree that we need to streamline some of these things, this competency things. I don't wanna go and think that we can do everything perfect and not understand that there's long-term costs associated.
Yeah, and we're a town of 5,000. It's not like we're a city where we.
No.
Well, but we're a town of 5,000 that's like a city though, because of the properties that we have on this road though too.
Yeah,
So-
but a lot of that's
Going
also
BLS
agriculture.
preserves that option for the future.
Right, it does.
Eliminating it, going back to just the fire, really for precludes that as as an option going forward, or it's a lot harder to go forward.
So if there was an override for this is just to fund it for 1 year for the $900,000, right?
It's an override, which means, an operational override as opposed to when we do the debt exclusion and buy equipment and it goes
Yeah.
down after we've bought it. It goes into the tax base and stays there. So that 800,000 would be there next
Yeah,
year.
this isn't tax.
This is recurring.
Great.
Well,
Well,
You're raising taxes for something.
for a full-time fire department. Really, that's what it's,
That's what,
Peter, that's what this is for.
Mm,
This is 100%.
but if
Because we can't go and keep on depleting our reserves, because that's.
No, I agree with that.
That's the
But-
only reason we're here. Let's be honest.
Well,
Okay, but okay, so let's go, you go back to what we had before, forget the ambulance addition. What we had before was a part-time, fire department that worked half the day, okay? And at night, the chief and the deputy chief would race out when there was a call and call all the surrounding fire departments, okay? And you gotta figure, by the time you get there, if it's a real fire, the building's probably gone.
Well, a lot of them were big car accidents.
Right, they were car accidents too, but can we continue to use a person like that, a chief, to be the first responder in the middle of the night when they're also working the day shift? Managing the people, we're gonna burn them out. And this guy has been dedicated to this town, and he's doing it for us. But when you hire
It's not
somebody new,
replaceable.
it's not gonna be
No,
part of
nobody else is gonna. do
Nobody
it.
else is gonna do that. And it's really, in my view, unfair to do that to him. Personally, I think we're gonna kill him. He'll have a heart attack, and I don't think that's right. I also don't think it's right to not have a full-time fire department for this town. I don't care if it's 5,000 or not. If you look at the amount of property that's at risk here, I think we need to be able to call at night and have our people show up at least with one truck. And that's the reason why I went with the Swiss Army knife truck that's also a pumper and a ladder, so that the small crew that shows up has the options how to fight the fire while they're waiting for more help to come. Because otherwise they go with, a pumper and they don't have a ladder to go save somebody on the second floor or access the roof over the solar panels or whatever else they have to do. So if you look at that and you say, okay, we do want a full-time fire department, then you're basically adding everything but the unknown capital that we haven't included, $250,000? $200,000. $200,000. And what we'll end up with is what we have now, a full-time fire department. All these people are firefighters, and if there's not a fire, they can go out on an ambulance as a second call. And we might get a little bit of money back for it, not enough to pay for it all, not even, but we're getting some money back, and our fire people aren't, there's an old thing,
Yeah, but-
the fire
Paul-
people just sit around. With the ambulance, they will also have more duties to keep them fresh, to keep them,
But
able
if
to
they're,
do things.
but if they're out on a call in the ambulance,
Right, then we don't have,
Now, is that what this meeting is gonna be later about
They
today
don't-
as to how much this override is gonna be and how much more our taxes are gonna be?
It's about the ambulance.
It's-
service.
because here's the thing with the BLS is that if they get called and and that wagon is out somewhere, then you don't have enough people.
right, we don't have enough we're back to full-time force right there. I know that. Okay, and the other
Or
issue is that
Converse is true, is that they're out
That's
on
what's
fire.
happening
fire
now.
truck, they can't come for
or in
second
a
call.
car accident.
Right,
They're not.
Okay.
they're not
and then,
available
and
to
then the other complication with both our fire department and our ambulance is that they get called by other towns. We're part of a larger group of, service.
It's not a
It's
good.
all timing.
It's not a good system, in my opinion. It's not a good system because you have one dedicated set of people that wearing two different hats. In any given moment, they get pulled in one direction. The other the other service that you're supposedly paying for isn't available.
Let's go to, because,
We're not adjourning, we're
no,
just changing the
we're
venue.
just changing rooms, but we're
Right.
not going to adjourn.